So I am here today with my very good friend Matthew Egan, short name Matt.
Nice.
Known to many for his excellent amateur football skills and speed of running up the touchline in a roadrunner kind of fashion. Would that be a decent
Very kind of
description?
you. Yeah, I think my greatest, most significant contribution to football was stretching your legs before every game.
Yeah, and you were very good at it too.
I'm the right size because I'm quite short.
Give us your potted history of who you are and what you do, so everybody knows.
So I'm the Editorial Director of the US and UK publications for a company called IDG. IDG is the world's biggest data, media and services company for technology. So what that means really is that I look after and support and manage the editorial teams that produce content for publications like Computer World, PC World, Tech Advisor, MacWorld. Essentially, we have lots of products, but we have 6 core products that address audiences, all of them in the tech space, and they range from CIOs in the enterprise right at the very top, so the people who spend literally billions of dollars buying tech, right down to consumers who read Tech Advisor, MacWorld and PC World, who buy stuff, so everybody essentially. And what we do is we build those audiences by creating content that gives them independent, expert buying advice, and then we make money from it. And we make money from it either from, on the one end, e-commerce, so people buy a thing and we get a certain amount of that sale price, right up to, in the enterprise, we make money because it's very difficult if you're a enterprise tech service to differentiate and to sell. You need to get to speak to very high value people who don't answer the phone, don't click on adverts to buy billion-dollar programs, and so we spend all of our time really caring about creating independent expert information that resonates with the CIO of a FTSE 500 company, in order that when one of our customers wants to speak to them in a meaningful way, we can, for instance, put 12 of them in a room around a dinner table and have an independent conversation, or we can write a piece of content and publish it on our sites, clearly marked as advertising, that gives them some useful information rather than just pushing a marketing message at them. Or we can even, and we often do, create content for our clients that they place on their own websites, on their own social media feed, because we've got 50 years experience of understanding how to speak to IT purchasers.
It's a big pitch. Like you've been in IDG for what, how long?
14 years.
14 years. The landscape has changed beyond recognition in the last 5 years, let alone that long.
Last 2 years.
What's the biggest significant shift that you've seen?
So it's all about the path to market, both in terms of marketers, but also us acquiring audiences. So 14 years ago, my job was to check spellings on a print magazine, and in fact, I used to run PC Advisor, as it was then's website, as kind of a hobby. It's a quirky thing to do. And then we were sort of very proud of ourselves because we transitioned from print to online, by which we meant that we were more interested in page views than how many magazines we sold. That now feels as arcane a conversation as did talking about print when we first went to online, because it's so much more about interacting and engaging with the right people rather than trying to just generate the biggest numbers.
Which it used to be.
Oh, 100%. Even 2 years ago, and one of the projects I'm undergoing right now is about transitioning focus from page views, which frankly some of our customers still care about, to
but why?
really
Why
be
do
able
they care about it?
Because it's a number you can measure.
Right.
Same as lots of PR people. They still care about print more than they care about online. And then if they measure online at all, it's to do with page views. And page views is one measure of attracting and engaging users, but it's not the best measure.
No.
I mean, one of the things that, so to go back to your original question is what's changed, lots has changed, but what hasn't changed is the core values.
Right.
So that if you know a subject matter inside out, journalism is ultimately about passing that information from your brain to the reader at the point they need it. And it used to be that they needed it and they'd go along to WH Smith's and they'd buy PC Advisor. Right? That's changed now. The point they need it is either via search, or increasingly actually people searching via social, so saying, does anybody know, or can you find this information? So it's about us presenting that information at the point at which those people need it. That has never changed. What's changed quite significantly is the way that's measured. Because like in the magazine days, you could have 120 pages of which only one useful piece of information was there, and that was good enough.
That was it.
No, that's not the case at all.
Very interesting for my audience and people that are actually looking at the thought leadership position and how you maintain that position and build it with a very low audience figure and then build it out. The story of PC Advisor, I think, is quite interesting how it's done that job over time. Tell me more about the role of a journalist today in your team. How do they operate? What kind of tools do they use? How do they do their job?
So again, like the core values never change, and in fact, if anything, they become more important. And those core values are independence, calling bullshit, frankly, knowing a subject matter more than your audience does, so that you can tell them in as clear and concise a way as possible what they need to know. Also being close to your audience. So certainly on the enterprise side, it's about literally knowing CIOs, IT managers, network managers. That hasn't changed. That will never change. What has changed, and the reason why you'll sometimes see sort of slightly fear-mongering headlines about journalism being dead or being under pressure, is that frankly it's not as easy as it used to be. I mean, it used to be the case that if you got a job in a publication, that was the only way that people could read you. In the old days, newspapers were the only way you could get news, which seems absurd. Now, who reads a newspaper in news now? Nobody. And frankly, they haven't woken up to that. So what has changed is that we try incredibly hard not to do anything that doesn't add value to our products and doesn't add value to the internet. So we will work very hard not to publish on any medium a thing that already exists on that medium.
That's very, very smart.
But it's tough, right? And it's especially tough,
especially in your field, because there's just tons of people doing it.
Well, and we've been doing it for 54 years.
So
if you're like Computer World, which is our original title, you've got a legacy and a history and an audience, 1 million Facebook likes of people who expect a certain thing from you. That frankly, it is not in our, it's not commercially viable or optimal for us to do everything for everyone. We can't. So we have to work out what we are the best at. And so that's when you mentioned what tools do we use. Well, we spend a lot of time unapologetically mining data to understand what matters to people.
That's a key point again, that whole analysis piece and understanding of who you're talking to. If you don't know that, then that's where it all begins and ends.
So with every publication, we try and make the conversation internally about who are we writing for, what about, what do they need to know from us that they can't get anywhere else, and how can we do that all the time and not do anything else. And those are like deceptively simple questions, because it's hard, and we get it wrong all the time. But if that's our focus, then so literally picturing and naming the person that we're writing for, what their job role is, what their concerns are,
that's very interesting.
and then understanding how they're going to source that information, and then only producing that information. And it doesn't work if your writing's bad or the information's bad. But I mean, an example I'd give is I just came out of a meeting where we were talking about this is so banal and very consumer, but laptops reviews. And even like you talked about the market changing. Even 18 months ago, the thing to do was to have the best story for best laptops. Well, actually, the way people look for that information has changed now. Like you might look for a laptop that's 100, 150 quid, or the best laptop for students, or the best business laptops, or the best MacBook, or whatever. And increasingly, this is kind of where I come back to the point about numbers not being everything. It matters more to us to have 100% engagement and success with the person who's seeking best student laptop than it does to broadly do okay with best laptops overall. Even though the volume of page views might be less, the engagement's better. And in that case, what matters to us then is we will facilitate more sales of laptops. And we will make more money from that, but equally we'll know that we're engaging better with our audience.
And the engagement, again, is the key.
Well, that's, again, so you ask about what's changed for journalists, and again, it used to be once a year we'd do a survey of our print readers, and brilliantly it would come back and everything was great. Everyone was different degrees of great, and every month we'd go through the magazine and we'd say, I really like your bit, I like your bit, your column's great. And of course it turned out no one cared about that stuff. Now, not only in real time do we see what people are reading, and that is interesting, but we can see truly with what people are engaging. So the e-commerce piece has been fascinating from an editorial point of view, because as an editorial leader, I was kind of icky about sharing the information with them. And what I've found, particularly with the UK team here, but is that and they don't benefit financially from any sales,
No.
quite deliberately, because they need to be independent. But they love knowing that their content drove a sale or facilitated a sale, because that's a metric of engagement, and that shows what I have done has added some value.
Yeah.
And on the enterprise side, it's to do with things like getting people to attend events or actually download further information. Again, that is perceived, certainly in some quarters by the editors, as a metric of success more than page views, because you can just slap up a slideshow that'll get you 10 page views. Yeah. But have you actually impacted on someone's life?
Yeah, excellent. From the engagement perspective, I'm interested in I talk a lot about video and how people use video today and how you can use it and get attention that way. Is video playing a bigger part in the work of your journalistic team?
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting, again, because there's a commercial side to it and there's an editorial side to it. So the commercial side to it is, video. You need to have video because you can monetize it, which I'm not all that interested in, and frankly the editorial team aren't all that interested in. What matters to us is that we don't talk about readers particularly, we talk about users.
Right.
And YouTube is by a mile the second biggest search engine on the internet. So if you take it from an enterprise point of view, one of the things we're really working hard on now with our US enterprise team particularly is showing as well as telling. So if we're explaining very complex things to very bright people, it's really important to show it in an infographic or more. We're trying to do motion graphics a lot more now.
Right.
So I was looking at something today that one of our teams is working on that explains like a thing that my brain can just not get its head around, and I can guarantee you that people spending millions of dollars of budgets working in very senior IT positions, the best of them will be happy to ask, but often these things come up and all of a sudden it's like, I need to understand.
I need something visual to.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And so a really good motion graphic. Like I remember the first time someone explained programmatic advertising, or even something as simple as data virtualization.
Yeah. Simple.
So, well, it is pretty simple.
Not to me.
But if you see it, because it's like instead of having a computer on everyone's desk, you have one big computer and a screen on everyone's desk. All right. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Much easier to show you it in a graphic. And on the consumer side, if we're trying to drive sales or trying to facilitate sales, people need to see the device they're buying, right? Yeah. It's as simple as that. So it definitely is playing a bigger part in our world. Again, a challenge of being around for 50 odd years is that it hasn't necessarily baked itself into our work process. Although what's really interesting with a lot of this stuff is that when people come into the industry from college or straight from school, often they're just really comfortable with this stuff.
Yeah.
Like you, they just set up a camera and talk to it, and then it's done.
And then it's become natural because it's something that they've had in their hand implanted since they were younger and get used to it, or do they come in with that as a journalistic trait?
I think. And the third thing is they're used to consuming information in that way.
Right. Yeah.
So the tutorials thing is a piece, right?
Yeah.
As you know, I'm dreadful at all DIY. But the other week when I was looking at replacing the TRV head on my radiator, I'm not looking for someone to tell me in written words how that's done. What I want is and I don't care about production values.
Exactly.
I want to see somebody actually in a house actually doing it and not destroying the house.
Yeah. No flames.
And I can stop it, and that's so.
It does make a difference, doesn't it?
Of course it does, and there is a challenge on the web right now because search isn't good enough on video. So you do have to write it as well, which is cool. We're happy to do that.
Yeah.
But again, this is why I like to constantly replenish the. I'm going to sound like Howard Hawks here, but constantly replenish the young people in the team, because they keep us on guard for this stuff.
But the change, the constant change in how you get attention, is very, very interesting to me. Obviously, the people that I work with, that the way that video grabs people and the way that people use video now, and it's interesting that you talk about the lack of production value. It's not a key differentiator at all times. Especially what I like about what you're saying though is that you're right at the sharp end of something that is super competitive in terms of getting people's attention.
So I would say the production values piece is interesting, right? Yeah. So if we're making content for a client, production values have to be a certain level of good.
Of course.
And that's not just the selling of it. Yeah. That's because our clients will be a blue chip IT service provider, and there's a part of that message has to be we are quality. Yeah. But that's the bare minimum. That's what gets you through the door. Yeah. The important thing is the message. Yeah. However, at the other side of it, if our consumer guys are at CES or MWC and they're showing a new product, we have heard feedback from our users that says they actually prefer the more rough cut version of it because it's authentic. It's like we're in the room, and it's the only way you can do it actually, because often you like literally have to kind of fight your way to the front of these things to get your hands on the device. So you're filming it with your phone.
Yeah.
But that it's authentic and it's experiential, so people like that.
And what they're quick.
Yeah, completely. So you can get it online quickly, although that's less important than people think, I think, sometimes. But what it then means is you can then go back to it and craft the better version of it, and we will do that. But so in terms of like grabbing attention, I think it's no longer optional. You know, and it's not so much about video either. I think it's about being visual,
right?
Because we are visual creatures.
Yeah.
And so, like I say, in the US specifically, our video team is also our art team, and they kind of cross over in the middle because, again, that motion graphic piece, particularly if we're talking about enterprise information, where it's about illustrating complex things in a visually satisfying way, it's a little bit like we used to differentiate between print and online. Differentiating between art and video is not a helpful way of thinking about those things.
Very good. So, what do you recommend for the kind of people that you know that I work with in terms of getting attention in this crowded space? You know, what relatively simple's not the word, but what straightforward tasks can people add into their everyday marketing and sort of getting messaging activity to really increase the attention that they get? If, say, they've got platforms in place already and they're doing stuff, what can they do to build it?
The most important thing I would say, and it's a bit of a politician's answer because I'm not going to give you specifics, but I would say is that piece about knowing who you are and what you offer to people. Be authentic. We talk about being hyper vertical. By which I mean, traditionally, media,
in a motion way, can you do?
Traditionally, media was about, as I say, it was about being as wide as possible.
It
was about being, playing in as many pools as possible, doing everything. So, like a newspaper goes from news through features, TV, whatever. You know, my first job in media, as you know, was doing TV listings. There was a time, nearly 20 years ago, when every newspaper had to have TV listings because that's where you get it from, and you'd also read a bit of news and do a bit of sport. These days, no one needs to do that because, for a start, your TV doesn't need listings. But if you want to find them, you can find them. So now it is about whatever you do, be the best at what you do. And if that's presumably what your clients are in their businesses, so make sure that's your message. And yes, it's always very helpful to have a bit of personality and to make people want to come back to you. But ultimately be really sure about what it is and just drill top to bottom, be the best at that thing and be the expert at that thing. No matter how, in fact, sometimes it's better to be like in effect dull. But you're doing an important function. Be the best and the most knowledgeable.
But you're digging your trench essentially, aren't you? And one of the things that I talk to with people in Australia is very much about the fact that the audiences may not be looking for the kind of information that they're putting out on, for instance, Facebook today. But if you dig that trench in 3 years when it's the only game in town, and you're there and you've dug this hyper vertical trench, then you're going to be found.
I'll give you a football stroke soccer analogy, speaking to Australian people. Someone once said to Gary Lineker, you're always in the right place at the right time. And there was always this perception of him that he was a lazy player, and he bridled at that because he was like, "No, I'm always in the right place." So he would make the same run 10 times and only be found once. And then people would say, "Oh, no, he's there just to tap it in." Well, no, that's because he was running his back legs off, just back and
very
forth.
Smart.
And from a media perspective, and from a social media perspective specifically, but whatever your route to audience is, keep doing the same things, keep doing the right things. And that's hard. It requires discipline. It requires planning. But if you know who you are, who your persona is, who the persona of the audience you're trying to reach is, and what you can give them in depth that they can't get anywhere else, and keep on doing it, your 3-year piece is really valuable because at the point at which you want to engage with that person or they want to engage with you, they will be able to find you.
I'm thinking now, in terms of the work that I do and the audience that I'm creating and the attention that I'm getting, very much on this 3 to 5 year piece, purely and simply because the change and knowing what I know about what's going on here and keeping an eye on what's happening in the States and talking to people like you a lot, the hyper vertical term is going to be my new favourite, purely and simply because and I shall gladly nick it from you, purely and simply because that's all it's about now, and that's becoming more and more apparent. One last thing that I'd like to ask you, just where from your own interactions on a daily basis with all of this world, where do you see? Nobody can look into the future with anything other than fear in many ways.
Paranoid optimism.
Paranoid optimism. That's a very good term. Where do you think it's going? What do I and people like me and the people that you interact with on a daily basis, what do we need to be looking at in that 3-5 year window?
Well, I think honestly, not blowing smoke, but thinking 3 to 5 years. Like, I mean, a tip one of my many bosses once gave me was when you're walking into work every day, think a week ahead, a month ahead, a year ahead. Well, I would say now that is 3 years and 5 years as well. But it's as well, because you could set up a 5-year plan and it will change within year one.
Very quickly.
The platforms change all the time. The ways people acquire information change all the time. Facebook is now fully in monetization mode, right? Yeah. It's definitely worth being on there, but it is not a social media platform anymore. It's a media platform. Yeah. What Mark Zuckerberg's done extremely successfully, and he must have very clever people around him, or he's very clever, is Instagram's there now. Yeah. And people laughed when he bought it for whatever it was, $1 billion, and it made him more in a quarter last year than the purchase price. Instagram is the social media network now. Yeah. So you probably, if it's relevant to you, you want to be on there. But again, it's like the platforms come and go. So think about which platforms make sense for your voice and be on them. Keep an eye out on what's happening. People like you can help in this respect. Exactly. What doesn't change is your core values, your core message, who you are and who they are. As long as you retain that, the platform can change and people will find you, but just keep on rolling with that message, I would say. One
very interesting thing, just because it's very different in Australia to how it's used here, but Twitter, do you still see it as a part of what you do? Do you use it more on a personal level? Is there a business place for it?
I think there is a business place for it, and I would say, for instance, so it is not a means of generating traffic to a website.
No.
Never has been.
Never has been.
We have 2 publications in our entire portfolio, Digital Arts here in the UK and MacWorld.com in the States, that get reasonable traffic from it. But and you're talking about like literally millions of interactions on Twitter leading to tens of thousands of page views. Right. So in that sense, it isn't. What I would say is, we do quite good business on hosting Twitter conversations for enterprise clients.
Engagement.
Completely. And that's how to measure it is it a way for you to actually engage with your potential customers? Yeah. What I would say is, if it's not, it can be a time sink. And there is nothing worse. It is worse to have an unresponsive Twitter presence or a bad Twitter presence than it is to not have one at all. Yeah. So I definitely think, and it's very territory based as well. So again, US, UK, huge. Yeah. Sweden, they know what we're talking about. And also the danger with Twitter as well is that it's primarily loved by journalists and marketers. So you can get a very skewed view of what interaction and engagement you're getting.
Thanks, sir.
Always.
Pleasure.